Hello, my name is Mariola Strahlberg, and I'm going to introduce myself because my voice actually carries. Because I would like you to know a little bit about my background first, and then I will get to the talk. So I'm originally from Poland. I was 17 when I left Poland, and I knew about Korczak only because I had to read King Mat I. Every child in Poland had to read King Mat I, and that was all. And then I came to the United States, and since I didn't speak English, the only field that was really appropriate for me was computer science and electrical engineering, and that's what I did for 26 years. I was a computer science researcher. And then something weird happened. 20 years ago, I started having this dream about Korczak. I don't want you to have an idea that, you know, it was like a psychic experience or something, but it was a real dream. And I couldn't really understand what was going on, and that was the time that my daughter was already born, and I ignored it, but it was coming, and it was coming. And I knew that it was some kind of a message. So through the soul searching, I decided that maybe my brain could be better used someplace else, and I decided to go back to school, and I became a doctor of Oriental medicine. And when I finished my studies in 1999, a big surprise happened. Instead of adults coming to my practice, I was getting kids. I was getting kids with learning, behavioral, and health issues. And you know, in Oriental medicine, you use needles, right? Well, it's difficult to use needles on American children who are so scared of vaccination and being poked all the time. So I knew that that wasn't the method. And then it dawned on me that maybe Korczak has something to do with this. And that's how my journey began. So before I start my formal talk, I would like to mention that actually in the United States, we do have association, Korczak Association. That association was existing. It wasn't a member of the International Korczak Association, but it was existed for 17 years. And I don't know if Kurt Bamse is here, but if he is, no, I guess he's not. But he was really the one that, if you go on the website, you will see his name. But last year, members of my board, 3 members of my board, took the trip to Russia, and we visited with the International Korczak Association in Russia, and we decided to join as a member. So the United States right now has is part of the International Korczak Association, and any of you who are so inclined, you know, you can contact us, and we are going to be very happy to tell you what's going on internationally as far as Korczak is concerned, and maybe after my talk you might get some inspiration for what would be the next step. I want to thank the president of my board, Russ Rudish, who is here, who came to support me, and also Elia Johnson. And if you ever go on my website, you are going to see her article that she wrote after she read a little bit about Korczak. Doctors, educators, policymakers, they don't really know who Korczak is, which is really astounding, because you go to Europe and you hear about him, and you go to Israel, you hear about him, you go to Africa, you hear about him. When I went to Russia, there were people from Ivory Coast, Burundi, who were representative of the International Korczak Association. So it's quite amazing that the United States doesn't know it. I also would like to mention that it's important to keep in mind that Korczak did not work alone. All his incredible ideas would have stayed in his head and on paper if it wasn't from Stefania Wilczyńska, who really stood by him for 30 years, from the beginning, you know, of the orphanage till the very end. And if it wasn't for her administrative and organizational skills, I don't think the orphanage would be what it is, what we know of it today. So I think it really is very important to remember. And of course, there was Mariola Falska later on in the Nasz Dom. I find it interesting that the 100th anniversary of Korczak's orphan homes happens to be in 2012. This is the year that many say that it's the end of the earth, right? The life on earth as we know it. And we know that the situation in our world is not really in the best shape. There are issues, there is war, there are wars, there are conflicts, there are issues, there are different crises, natural devastations. And here in the United States, I feel we really face a major crisis with children. They are not doing well physically, they are not doing academically well, and they are not doing emotionally well. And health and welfare of children has not been a national priority, and yet without making it a national priority, I don't think that we are going to see a world that we want to see in the future. I bet if Korczak was here, he would ask you these questions also. So the first question is, are today's children smiling? Are they happy? Are their parents, educators, and policymakers happy? Children today are different than they were when I was growing up in the 1950s and 1960s. 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s saw this large group of new kids that were coming that are different. They didn't fit the norm. So that's one group, okay? Now, and then September 11 happened. Where were you when September 11 happened? If you were on the East Coast of the United States, that particular day really brought something different into our lives. So now imagine that the mother is pregnant with a child, or the child is an infant, or like my next door neighbor was giving birth on that day. There has to be an effect on these kids from what was going on, how stressed out everybody was around. So now if you look, these kids today are in the 4th and 5th grade. Did you visit any of these schools and talk to the 4th and 5th graders? They are different. The bullying and teasing that is going on in these classes is unbelievable. Unbelievable, and the kids are suffering. And then when you talk to the teachers, you are going to find out that they are totally at the wit ends. They don't know what to do with those kids. And when you talk to the kids, you find out that there is a lot of shouting, a lot of sending out, a lot of time, the names are on the board for everybody to see, and their precious recess time is being taken away. So something is off. And then, if you look at what Korczak said in 1924, and I'm going to quote, that's 50 years ago, that's exactly 1970s, he said that there would not be a school without without children's court. Why? He felt that the court is needed in order to be the guardian of law and order, to help teachers teach behavior without shouting or hitting. Luckily, we don't have hitting today. Is it possible that he envisioned different children coming to us starting in 1970s? One of the people in the US who knows about Korczak is Dr. Clifton Cleveland, a medical doctor. You know, I scan internet looking for people to connect with because I would like to have a bigger community of people that know about Korczak in the US. So I found him on internet. And he wrote a book about people who influenced in his life. So the book is called Healers and Heroes, okay, by Dr. Clifton Cleveland. And he writes in this book, oh, and there are 6 chapters, okay, and the last chapter is about Korczak, and he feels that Korczak was really his biggest mentor. So he writes in this book, Korczak conceptualized an alternative universe, an ideal world in which all children would have respect, love, and protection before the law. Children and